It's Corby Midline, the no bullshit psychic. And I'm basically practicing, if you will. Let me make sure that I've got, yep, my AirPods look like they're connected. That's good. Um, Last night, for my very first one, yes, I had the background that you can see folded up over there. But one of the main things about me is I'm the no bullshit psychic. So you get me in a t shirt, and this is the office. We have a very tiny little house. It's like 864 square feet. And it's a matter of trying to get a feel for this. And so I just decided to jump on. One of the reasons that it took me so long to do live social media like TikTok, like Twitch, is because so many of the streamers have the hair, the makeup, the fancy background. And I'm saying, I don't do that. That's not me. So when I was just working under Corby Midline, I had all that pressure. And now that it's the no bullshit psychic, well, this is no bullshit. This is absolutely who I am. No mystical, no do not look behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz crap. So I figured I would come on. I would see how things are doing, what we're doing, if we get some kind of a chat. I'm not sure how that works, but we'll see. And I thought that I would catch you up a little bit on who precisely I am, especially since a lot of you are probably going to meet me for the first time. Um, I started doing this work, as I say, when I was 18, but I was always interested in it since I was a little kid. I was always the different one. I was the chubby, four-eyed person that everybody bullied. Coke bottle glasses, man. I mean, forget it, blind. But back in those days, back in the 60s, if somebody was exceptionally intelligent, they weren't pegged as gifted the way they are now. They were always marked as the troublemakers, the ones who weren't nice to the teachers. Then basically, I was, if you know anything about indigo children, I was an indigo scout. For those of you who don't know what an indigo is, they're kind of mankind point 1.5 or maybe 2.0. Whereas most people think A to B to C to D, indigos think A to Z to green to Paris. We have no truck with rules. We see things other people don't. If we're good friends with somebody, we can actually, practically telepathically talk to each other. We knew the signals. And that always is the kind of thing that if you don't understand it, people get scared. So, okay. So I had a very lively internal storyline going. And magic seemed the way to do it. Hey, hi there, Annis. I see you're here. Annis is one of my Patreon people. We'll talk about that a little bit. But magic seemed to be the way for me to find out who I was. So I kept looking for it. And in the 60s, that was kind of the beginning of what we did. You had people like Sybil Leek, who was the witch everybody knew. Lori Cabot, of course, came in later. But it gave me a sense that maybe there would be people who would understand who I was. Got into theater in high school, went to college for theater. But it was the metaphysics, the tarot cards, the magic, the psychic stuff that really grabbed me and started to tell me who I was. So I kept that going for decades and decades and decades. I am thoroughly convinced it's one of the reasons that I was able to write for ElfQuest. Now, since this is very much a gamer site, y'all might know who that is. If you don't, ElfQuest is a graphic novel series that started in 1978 by Wendy and Richard Pini, and it is still going today. If you go to elfquest.com, ELFQUEST.com, virtually everything that they've printed is there, and you can catch up. These are elves that are different from your Ralph Bakshi elves. They're different from your Lord of the Ring elves. They have a feel of indigenous Native American. They ride wolves. They are very much tribe. They can send to each other. And how they adapt to the world where their original spaceship crash landed, yeah, they are from space, is just a gorgeous, fascinating story that has been going on for damn near half a century, just like me. So that gave me some comfort. But I still did the psychic work because I knew there was something beyond who we were. And that was the most important thing to me. I kept looking at it. When I had the chance to be psychic full time, 9/11, I jumped. Hey, Janelle. So it was not easy. I really jumped it in 2002. I had to figure out what my talents were, get a logo, everything. And my husband, in the meantime, was still working as a museum director. So we knew we had some kind of income coming in. Oh man, 7 days a week, any place that I could read, whether it was a tiny table at a psychic fair. I finally got on the circuit with some of the bigger ones. And the 18 years I was on the road, from basically 2002 to about 2020, my nickname was the Travel Channel. It's 45 weekends a year. I would be home maybe 2 days a week. But I loved it. And I was thriving because I love to meet people. I am friendly enough that I can chat up a fire hydrant. And because of my theater background, I was able to stand out in the crowd. And, that's the important thing. Everybody who is a psychic does have a different bedside manner, if you will, tableside manner. And you have some of the people who are like what I call little dancing raccoon, sweet, hi, here's my spirit guide, Arctic Bear, let's see what. I'm from New York. It doesn't work. So I became truly a New Yorker on the circuit. I took no shit. I told the truth. I didn't care how long I had to work. I mean, it could be grueling. I used to do shows up in Canada. God, I loved Canada. God, I miss Canada. They were run by Stan Mallow and Ray Fauché, First Star Psychic Fairs. Man, you will never find a more professional pair of promoters than they were. And they do a lot of 3-day weekends up in Canada. So let's take the September Labor Day weekend show. I would drive up there from where I live in New York. It would be about 8 hours. I drive up there Thursday night, stay with B&B that became family. Then I would hit the hall at noon, set up my booth. The show would open at 3 and go until 9. Saturday and Sunday, it would go 10 to 9. And then Monday, because it was the 3-day weekend, it would go 10 to 6. And I'd pack up my stuff and I'd drive the 8 hours back and I'd get home at maybe 2 in the morning. I think my record was reading 70 people in 4 days and doing 2 lectures. But I had a reader's high. Loved it. and could have done that forever, except I kept getting this nudge from upstairs. And they kept saying, we would prefer it if you stayed home. You didn't do too much traveling. But, I was hooked. I was a Hilton Diamond because I always stayed at, like Hampton Inns and stuff. And, as a Hilton Diamond, you would walk in and they do the we're not worthy. And it, yeah, it fed the ego. And it was fun meeting all these different people all the time. But when I didn't listen is when I think the universe took it in its own hands. And 6 years ago today, literally today, in the middle of the night, got up, go to the bathroom, and all of a sudden when I stood up, I was in complete agony. My husband had just gone off for a weekend trip, bro bonding with my brother. And the pain was, it's not a scale of 1 to 10, it was like 14. I couldn't move without screaming, and I was home alone. And this was like 3 a.m. Finally, when I figured it was a decent hour, I called a friend who took me to our local hospital. And what apparently had happened is I had a herniated disc and a pinched nerve. It took me weeks to get over it. I had to do PT, all of that. Finally, I was pretty much back to normal-ish in November, but the doctors looked at me and said, we're really sorry, but your career is over. You are no longer going to be able to do those 10-hour one-way drives, and you certainly cannot lift all the heavy boxes and load in and load out. You have to find something else to do. Well, I said, all right, let me see how much I can get done for working at home, which is things like, setting up Zoom and Skype at that time, and how was I going to advertise and all of that. And I got it set, and it was really working well by about February. What happened in March of 2020? The years of murder hornet bingo and hold my beer, COVID. And many of the friends I had who were on the circuit and never worked from home tanked. They had no business, none. I just sailed along. And that was one of the most important things that taught me, when the universe taps you on the shoulder, don't say, yeah, later. Turn around and listen to what they have to say. As a result, 6 years later, I do have a thriving business from home. Do I do shows still? Oh, I do local ones. I'm about an hour and a half from Saratoga. Okay, so I do things there. I do things in Albany, which is 45 minutes away. So I still have my show chops, if you will. But I have become really spoiled. Look at all the people I can talk to here. Clients all over the world. Look, somebody that I read from Rio de Janeiro is not going to want to come to Cobleskill, New York, with the sheep and the cows. So I acknowledge I'm 70. I acknowledge that my body doesn't do what it used to do. But from here up, it's still really sharp, and I can still read. That's one of the reasons that Blue, he is the Blue Rose Mystic. His name is also Chris Losay, and he's a good buddy of mine, is getting me to do more of this social media stuff. So that's what I'm doing. Now, I have no idea about any psychics that are on here. I know it's mostly a gamer site, but since when has that ever stopped me? Blue, there's my Blue. So we're messing with this, and I want to start doing readings here. One of the things that I do over on TikTok that I'm also going to bring here is something called Cafe Corby. Now, what is Cafe Corby? Cafe Corby isn't a reading hour. We have one of those, and we may bring it over here. But there are so few elders in the intuitive field that will just hit the live button, grab a cup of coffee, or this late at night, my bottle of Hint, and field questions about what we do, about how we do it, about if someone wants to start, how do they start? And the reason this is really important to me is because, guys, at 70, I'm not going to be here in 30 years. If I am, I'll be this little shriveled raisin somewhere. So I got to pass on every single thing I know while I'm still sharp. So there you go. Questions can be about, how do I choose cards? What do you do when someone tries to read you and you don't want to be read? How do I figure out what I'm good at? All of that stuff is stuff that we discuss in Cafe Corby. And since Blue Rose Mystic is here, I'm going to tell him right now we need to schedule that in. Now, when we do readings here, which I probably will, we're very fast. Okay. Ain't nobody reads cards as fast as I do because I've read them for so long. And I'll show you. It's not only tarot, it's all of these oracle decks as well. And each one of them has a special purpose that it tells me when I buy it or when it waves at me from across the bookstore or whatever. When I do readings like that, it is always best to give me a sharp question. Okay? Don't just say, can I have a card? Because then I'll say, yeah, and move on to the next person. Things like, you can ask about career, you can ask about romance, you can ask about family, you can ask about finances, you can ask about spiritual road. The two things I don't do here are going to be health, because health is not one of my strong points, but I'll have someone to recommend you to, and mediumship. And mediumship is really, really important to me. It's not just a matter of, yes, I see a woman in a flower dress at your grandma and she loves you. What kind of proof is that? So I always do things, what I call getting the dog tags. For instance, my father, Jerome Richard Dorkin, who died in 2001 at the age of 80. Notice that tells me nothing, but it gets me right into the energy. And then what happens is I begin to get a feel from my guides. And for some crazy reason, they play charades with me. They smoked, they did weed, they had surgery, there was an accident. Those are just 4 quick examples. And they will often give me attitude. For instance, if a guy does this or, shoves the fedora forward, if I'm getting a dead guy, that's usually they're kidding about how they were gorgeous and handsome and, all of that. Sometimes if they're really funny, they'll do this. So people laugh. Sorry about that. But the thing is, I bring the personality forward. And that is the most important thing. Now, since I don't quite know the rules here, I'm going to tell the PG, not the R version. But this is the exact reason why I will not do it in public either. 20 years ago, there was a biracial same-gender couple. The black partner had died and her white widow wanted to speak to her. Now, see this face? I'm a nice kid from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I have manners. But what came out of my mouth were flawless urban ebonics with language that should not come out of this face. And as soon as I finished that sentence, I went, ugh. But the woman in front of me broke out laughing and nodded, because that particular profane sentence is what her partner Isabel said as she walked in the door after every business trip. Now, I can do that when it's personal. I cannot do that standing on a stage. But the conversation was 15, 20 minutes long. When I have 200 people, as I often do over on TikTok, and 1 hour, I can't spend that much time reading mediumship. So that's why it's quick, it's spirit guide, it's cards, it's past lives. And that's another thing. How do I do past lives? Because I'm a specialist at that. If you say to me, can I have a past life again? The answer is yes. But when you don't give me an obsession, a phobia, a person, or a place from this life, remember, we've had hundreds of past lives, all of us. Nobody is smart enough to get it done in 1 or 2. So I could pull a past life that is absolutely spot on right, and you would just look at me and go, yeah, and if it doesn't touch onto this life. So, examples. There was a woman that I read when I was at Lilydale, the spiritual community with Robert Schwartz. And the woman had a butch short haircut. And she raised her hand and she said, can you tell me why I'm so terrified of having wet hair in my face? I mean, one strand and I start to hyperventilate. And it took me about 8 seconds. And I looked at her and said, yes, you have a 5-syllable answer, Lusitania. In 1915, you were a passenger on the ship. It was torpedoed by the Germans. You went over the side. Your hair was still the very heavy Edwardian style. You hadn't cut it, style it to a more modern look. And all that hair took on a lot of water, and also debris kept getting caught in it and pulled you down and you drowned. And she looked at me and she said, is that why I'm terrified to go on a cruise? I said, possibly. Second story. A woman came to me at a psychic fair and said, look, I don't know what to do about my son. He's 29. He won't do any decisions without me. He won't live more than a mile away. I know this is off. What's going on? Took me about 15, 20 seconds. And I said, okay, I'm seeing 1944. This is Utah Beach, so it's D-Day. Your son is a soldier. He's down. He's bleeding out on his leg. He has a bunch of shrapnel in it. You're his commanding officer. You scramble over the dunes. You pull him to safety. You take some shrapnel too, but you both live. And I opened my eyes because I usually close them when I do this. She was very pale. And she said, can you see my rank? I said, yeah, you were a sergeant. She goes, he's called me Sarge since he was 3 years old, and we have never known why. That's when past lives are important. If they can take a fear, a blockage from this life and show it to you from a past life so you don't have to relive it, that's when it's important. But I'll tell you, I have had more than one person come to me with something like, I know I must have been Anne Boleyn because I can't wear turtlenecks. The door's over there. No. But I do love cards and I do love past lives. Can I do mediumship? Yes. But there are other people who specialize in it. You see, when the universe hands you your draft notice and you take it, it starts looking inside you at what you've got to see if it works. And whatever your real talents are, that is what you're going to use. I was a theater major at Brown University and I acted professionally in New York. So I understand characters and storylines. Words are my thing, baby. I'm an author. I've published 3 books, so I can tell the stories. And because I've loved history forever, when I see these past life things, I can get the details where someone who does not have a history background might not. So that's why the universe has really honed in on cards, which tell stories, and past lives for me to do. There are a couple things I simply can't. For instance, don't ask me to do spirit art because I cannot draw a stick figure with a sharp pencil and a lot of prayer. Not going to happen. And pendulums are really, really neat beasties, but I had a slight benign tremor in one hand. My father did too. It's why he became a cardiologist, not a surgeon. So when I hold a pendulum, I can't trust that I'm getting the stuff. That's why I don't use pendulum. And it doesn't mean I'm not talented enough. It just means it's not what I'm really good at. Okay. Let's take something mundane. Cooking is therapy for me. Baby, I am fabulous in the kitchen. But I can't pin straight. Don't ask me to knit. Don't ask me to sew. And it doesn't mean I'm not good. It just means that my talents are over here. That's one of the other things that I can help you with. But don't ask me to tell you what your purpose is like that. Because your purpose comes from your entire background, what you believe in, how life has treated you, what's most important to you. And I may see something that you'd be really good at, but if it's not your heart and your passion, why? I mean, my father always told me, you would make a fabulous lawyer. You should go to law school. No, I've worked for lawyers, thank you, and I would have made a lousy lawyer. Yes, I can be theatrical. I mean, I used to love watching Alan Shore on Boston Legal. That's the kind of lawyer I would have been. But it's not what I love. This is what I love. So it's better that I do something like this. So I see that I have some folks, God bless you, on here, 5. I've got Janelle, Bat Dog, Blue Rose. Who else do I have here? Please be kind enough to, give me a wave. Let me know that you're here. And if you have any thoughts on what a psychic should be doing here or can do here, I would love to know what you think, because every single thing is on the table for a learning hour at this point. And so if you think, Corby, what about X? Corby, have you ever thought about Y? That's great with me. That really is. So I didn't even know how long we've been on. Anyway, what is it? Chris, if you know how long I've been on, would you be kind enough to tell me, please? And Bat Dog Mom is one of my peeps from my Patreon group. Now, Patreon is my favorite way of teaching. I mean, I love teaching in person, but I'm a facilitator. I don't just sit up there and lecture, because that bores the hell out of me. I want you guys interacting. And so a lot of my classes don't work on Zoom. For instance, I do something called Decadance, where I teach people how to read any oracle deck they pick up within 30 seconds, and they don't have to be trained. They don't. But part of the exercise is I pair people off and they read for each other, but then they trade decks, and you can't do that online. So that's the kind of thing I can only teach in person. But what I do on Patreon is people read for each other with their own decks. People are learning how to pick up on past lives from other people. We do meditations, we do visualizations. Very often I will have special teachers in there. Our 2 favorites so far have been Pat Dumas, who is an astrologer in Pennsylvania that is unnervingly accurate. And she isn't flaky. She's not a cosmic muffin type. She explains in almost scientific form what's happening in the sky, what's going to happen down here because of it, and why. Really fabulous. And the other one is Catherine Knock. And Catherine is over in the UK, but she is a marvelous animal communicator. Absolutely wonderful. And you can't see it, but I will show you. See that little pad right there? That is known as the Mupervisor shelf. That's where my 2 Maine Coons and my little rescue boy hang out with me in the office, but I covered it up so you wouldn't see the cat box. Whenever I'm talking to Auntie Kay on Zoom, I don't care where they are in the house, they come scrambling and everybody goes on top of the shelf because they want to talk to her. So she's really, really great. And she has shown my people that, yes, they can do animal communication too. Because as people have heard me say over and over and over again, I'm not special. You can do what I do. And it's true. The example I use is we all have 10 fingers, right? Everybody can go to a piano and play chopsticks. Some of us really love the idea of music. So we study how to read it. We practice and we get pretty good. And then 1 in 100 million is Elton John. So I'd say I'm in that second group. I'm certainly not Elton John level psychic. I don't believe that. But we all have 10 fingers. Anybody can get it started. So that's what I do. All right, so let me see. I think it's been about a half an hour. If any of you folks watching have any questions for me or anything that you're curious about with what I've been talking about, throw it in the chat, please. Okay? It is not easy for somebody to do this for a complete 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and nobody is that they're all kind of like just, they got their popcorn in there watching. So if you've got thoughts, I would love to hear them. Otherwise, maybe we're done for the night, and I'm going to talk to Chris and we'll set up a schedule. So here, you should look for Cafe Corby. We will eventually do free reading hours. I will occasionally just get on here and natter at you because I understand that's also something I'm supposed to do. So that's where we are. I think that there are one or two people who came to watch that I am not familiar with, and welcome aboard. Thank you so much for just hanging out. And let's see how much fun we can have with this. Really, really, truly. Any chance that I have to work with people who are curious, who maybe have had bad experiences with psychics and need to learn that there are good ones out there, that's my thing. And frankly, I love rookies. There are a lot of teachers who are, this level, and that's why you pay them $12,000. And that's not me. I am what in fantasy books is called a way shower. What's a way shower? The hero goes galumphing through the forest, and there's this little hut, and he ends up having to stay over there overnight. And the little old person who's in the hut, just as he's leaving, hands him a magic pretzel or something. And the pretzel is obviously terribly important and figures in the whole story, but you never see the little people again. They're the way showers. They give the hero some object or some lesson that they need, and you never hear about them again, but they've played their part in the story. And that's kind of how I see where I am. Okay? I will never be as well known as Wayne Dyer. I will never have people talk about me 20 years later after I die the way they talk about Wayne. But that's okay. If I do my work here now, if I make a difference here now, then I will have fulfilled everything that I am meant to do. So there we are, guys. This was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. That's very good. Watch my schedule here. I'll have to figure out how to do that. But we will put up when we're going to be here for Cafe Corby and for readings. And if you have any other ideas of what you'd like me to do, let me know.